Is Ellen Taverna. I'm the policy officer and the co-director of the Becker Center for Advocacy at the ARC. And we have Kathleen Amaral, who's our community relations manager. And Kathleen and I work very closely on our census advocacy, and we're also working together on making sure people are aware of all of the election issues around the election and how to vote. And so there's a campaign called the ARC Votes, started by the ARC US. And so we have a lot of information on our website, and the ARC of US website has a ton of information about voting and how to vote and why our vote is so important. So I encourage you to check that out as well. So I'm going to go over sort of the nuts and bolts of how to vote. Oops, excuse me. So first of all, I want to say the ARC is nonpartisan. And I don't know if any of you are friends with Kathleen and I on Facebook. I just wanted to get that out there because we may have certain opinions about certain candidates, but the ARC is a nonpartisan organization, and we have our policy opinions up on our website if you're curious about different issues around Medicaid or housing on our website and the ARC US website. But I just wanted to make sure that you're aware that we are nonpartisan, and we want this webinar to be educational, and it's intended to be a substitute for any sort of professional or legal advice. And we just want to be able to inform our constituents as much as possible and provide resources for you to figure out by yourself of how you want to vote. So first of all, people with disabilities make up about 1/4 of our population. And so we are a powerful collective constituency, and we want to make sure that we're counted. And this election is extremely important. And in 2020, we're going to, on November 3rd, and really right now you could be voting, we're voting for elected officials up and down the ballot. So getting to the polls is the best way to voice our opinion and on very important issues. And so, as I said, early voting has already begun. General election is on November 3rd. And we just want to make sure that everybody has a plan to vote that works best for you and your family. So first of all, registering to vote in Massachusetts. If you have a driver's license or a state ID, you're most likely automatically registered. But if you want to know if you're registered, we have provided the Secretary of State webpage just to check it out. And there's lots of ways. I mean, Facebook has it now. There's a lot of different websites that have it. But if you want to go to the Secretary of State, Massachusetts Secretary of State webpage, has the most accurate information. And the deadline to register is actually in 2 days. So that's October 24th. So make sure if you are not registered or you're unsure, just to check it out before October 24th. And just be aware that there's no registration on election day, which is November 3rd. How do you register? As I said before, our Massachusetts Secretary of State online register portal, and you can do it, mail it in or send it in person, but just do it by October 24th. And do you need an ID to register? Again, as I mentioned, if you have a driver's license or a state issued ID, that should cover it, or other identification that has your name and address and all that information on the website. Can I vote if I have a disability? Of course, yes, we all know you can vote. People with disabilities who are at least 18 have the right to vote. And if you have a guardian, you can still vote unless a judge says you cannot, and Kathleen's going to go into that a little more in detail. But if you have any questions about it, we have a contact information for the Disability Law Center if you have any concerns or questions. Of course, you can contact us as well. Voting in person. We are encouraging everyone to vote early. And where do you vote? You vote there at your polling place, and to find that, we have the website wheredoivotema.com. And when can you vote? And voting is starting, early voting has started already. So it's from October 17th to October 30th. And we're really encouraging you all to vote early if you can. I know this is a pandemic and people may be wary about voting in person. We know that the polling places are taking the proper precautions, but to avoid lines and you want to be social distancing, we really encourage you to vote early if you can. If you do vote on election day, just remember that the polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Can I vote from a car? The polling place is inaccessible. Unfortunately, in Massachusetts, is not allowed to request a ballot from your car. In other states, you can, but not in Massachusetts. And if you need assistance with your ballot, you can choose really anyone to help you except for your boss, a union agent, or one of the candidates that's on the ballot can help you in marking your ballot. So it's really just everyone but those three people. And then, do I need an ID? So if it's your first time voting, you do in a federal election after registering to vote by mail, or if you haven't voted for a very long time, or you're on the inactive list, you need to make sure you bring an ID. And I would bring your ID anyway, but you most likely won't need it if you've been electing, if you've been voting recently. You most likely don't need it. You just need to provide your address, but I always bring my ID just in case, because you never know. Voting by mail. So obviously, because of the pandemic, this is a really important way. And in Massachusetts, every registered voter, so you have to make sure you're registered. So every registered voter can vote by mail without an excuse at all. And you know, previously, if you have a disability, you can vote by absentee, which is basically vote by mail ballot. But everyone in the 2020 election can vote by mail without any excuse. And how do I request a mail ballot? So you should have received one by mail, but if you haven't, if you're a registered voter and you never got it, you can request it and download it from the Secretary of State website. And then you need to fill it out as carefully as possible. And so I can't emphasize that enough, because people have had their ballots rejected if it doesn't have a signature, or it's the wrong pen, you put it in pencil. Those are the reasons, and that can happen if you don't submit it to your election office in time. Those are all ways that you could essentially get your ballot rejected. So just make sure that you're following the instructions as carefully as possible, and then either putting it in the mail or going to your election office and dropping it off in one of the drop boxes, which is what I did. I filled it out. I got it in the mail, and then filled it out at home, and then brought it and dropped it off. So if you're wary about mailing it, that might be a good idea. So when do I need to request the ballot? So this is a request. The deadline to submit a request is October 28th. So, I mean, I would do it as soon as possible, but you have until October 28th to do so. And then, can I fill out my ballot by email? So Massachusetts does allow certain voters with disabilities to request an accessible vote by mail ballot, which can be completed electronically, and you can either email it or mail it back or bring it back in person. And Kathleen's going to get into more detail about that, because there's been a recent court case about it. But just so you know, if you do go that route, or if you go the route about mail at all, you must be postmarked by November 3rd. And then they receive it by November 6th, but it has to be postmarked by November 3rd. You can also bring it on election day. If you do it ahead of time, then you can just drop it off on election day. And then again, if you want assistance, it's the same thing that I had mentioned in the previous slide, that it can't be your boss, union agent, or candidate. And then learning about the issues. So what are the people or laws that you can vote for? So what's on the ballot? So there is an easy way to do some prep ahead of time. You can go to ballotpedia.org and look up the Massachusetts sample ballot, which you provided the link. And you can find out what is on the ballot right now. So what are the issues, the ballot measures that are on Massachusetts on election day. And so that's a good way to review it ahead of time, and you can see like what the issues are. As far as like policy issues of why you would vote for a certain candidate, I mean, we can't say really, either way, but we know what issues are important to our community. And certainly we have all that information on our website about, why Medicaid is important, and why, certain housing laws are important, and who supports those, or which candidates support our policy issues. So, I mean, I encourage you, there's a debate tonight, and I think it would be great if you haven't already watched the debates. I mean, first one was a little concerning, wasn't the greatest debate I've ever seen, but it is a good way to get a sense of who the candidate is. The presidential debate is on tonight, so if you're interested and you're undecided, I would definitely check that out. But I would look at the candidates' websites. I mean, I'm sure many of you know this already, but it's important to look at both sides for any of the candidates up for election. So it's not just the president; it's our state reps and senators and other candidates as well. So I'm going to hand it off to Kathleen. She's going to cover the rest of our presentation.
Great, thank you. So yeah, Ellen gave you a lot of information, and after this webinar later today, you'll receive a PDF with the hyperlinks. So be on the lookout for that. Anyone that registered for this webinar will receive it because it's a lot of information. It's not always easily digestible, but she really offered a lot of good information. So I just wanted to start here. Ellen mentioned a quarter of our population are people with disabilities. And so that is a large group of people, and your vote, everyone's vote counts. So this slide covers the Americans with Disabilities Act. And I put this there just to remind folks that, simply put, that there are federal laws that protect the right to vote. Okay, so this slide shows the language of the ADA, but in essence, it's a federal civil rights law that provides protections to people with disabilities. And those protections are similar to other protections that all people have based on race, color, sex, national origin, age, and religion. And Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act requires states and local governments to ensure that people with disabilities have full and equal opportunity to vote. And this really applies to all aspects of voting that Ellen went over, including the registering to vote, the accessibility, and the date of the location and the ways in which a person votes. And there are other, and the link on the bottom will bring you right to the full language of the ADA. And there are other federal rights that accompany the ADA in terms of accessibility of the polling place and all the ways that your rights are not inhibited based on your ability to sort of meet the mark or pass some sort of test to vote. As Ellen mentioned, people with disabilities who are at least 18 have the right to vote. Your vote matters. It's protected by the law, as you see here on this slide, unless a judge says in a guardianship decree, anyone with a guardian can vote unless there's specific language in the decree that says that you are not able to vote. And if that is the case, I do encourage folks to reach out to our protective agency, is the Disability Law Center, and you'll find links to Disability Law Center in this slide presentation. They will help you understand how to restore your vote. So that's something really important, that you have the right to vote, even if you have a guardian helping you with some decision making in your life. Ellen, could you forward the slide? The next slide. I don't think maybe I can. No, I can't. Okay. So I share with you Massachusetts Voters Bill of Rights. And so on the Secretary of State's website, there is a list of all of your rights. And I put them here because just to reinforce the notion that your voting rights are protected and they're guaranteed to qualified registered voters. And however, if you can forward it to the next slide, there's 3 slides that list all of the votes, and they're not exclusive to disability, but they include the language around which the right to vote is granted to folks with disabilities under guardianship, unless registered voters, unless the guardianship notes that the person's not able to vote. And so there is a provision that, and Ellen might want to go into this a little bit more, that if you are a registered voter and you show up to vote in person, you don't take the option to vote early, that you arrive in person. If something's listed incorrectly, if your name is not listed, but you are certain that you're listed, they should take every effort to help you cast your vote. But you do have the right, though, in the worst case scenario, to cast what's called a provisional vote. So you would cast your vote that day, and upon proof that you were mistaking, there was a mistake in how you were listed, the focus is to get your vote. Okay, so there is that that provision. So this is just a lot of the language. And if you
Can I speak?
Sure.
Oh yeah. I was just gonna say I'm already registered to vote,
Wonderful.
That's
but
wonderful.
I'm I know what I think maybe what I feel like it's starting to be a little bit complex, given the whole voting thing regulations, even though I already am registered to vote, but still
I think we're just explaining your rights
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah, we're explaining your rights.
okay.
Yeah. Yep. So thank you.
Yeah, we don't want to make sure you know that it's not complicated at all, and that
No.
I understand.
that you're registered is fantastic, and that's the first step. And then it's making a plan of whether you want to vote in person or you want to vote by mail, or variations of that.
I think I'm gonna vote in person.
Okay, that's great.
Thank
Now
you, Michael.
you can continue.
Thank you for sharing. That was really great. I appreciate that. And of course, folks can also, at the end, we're going to have a Q&A, but if there's something that you do need to need an explanation on, feel free to follow Michael's lead. That was wonderful. So I'm not going to read the rest of these rights. Ellen, could you scroll to the next? Okay. Thank you. All right. So this is really exciting news that we want to share. And the Disability Law Center really put in a lot of work along with other advocates. So on October 15th, the Secretary of State, as you can see, settled a lawsuit. And I have a link here to the suit, basically providing a mechanism which wasn't available during the primary in September, but it is now. And so there's a mechanism for online voting for voters with disabilities who cannot effectively access the paper vote by mail system. And so this link is to more information about that. But basically with this settlement, the voter who would take the opportunity to benefit from this lawsuit, the voter would need to request an electronic ballot and then submit the ballot via mail or email, and then sign electronically verifying that they're an eligible voter, and so on, that they won't vote somewhere else, and so on. And so in order to access what's considered the accessible vote by mail program, which is an accommodation, you would contact, and it's on the bottom of this slide, the accessible vote by mail coordinator by email, or you can give them a call at that 617 number. And there are two parts. I just want to clarify this, that there are two parts to this request. The voter must provide a statement sort of confirming why the request for this accommodation is being made vis-a-vis the disability. And then also a full name, so the first, middle, last, the where you're registered to vote. So your street address, your city and town, and your zip code, and also a mailing address if you utilize a mailing address that's different from your voter registration address. You would provide your date of birth, your email address, and then a phone number that you can be reached. The most important part about this is that it needs to include a date and a signature, but the signature does not have to be handwritten. It could be a typed signature. If you need that accommodation, you would note that in your request for utilizing the AVBM, the accessible voter by mail system. You would just note that I will be utilizing typing my signature, and that will be acceptable. And so that really is it. It's quite exciting. Let me see. So if the voter wishes to return the completed ballot by email, they must provide, so that goes back to the email address. The email address has to be the email address that you requested the ballot from with. The email address that you used to request the ballot, if you went that avenue, you would have to provide that to the coordinator. And it's very important. So if the coordinator receives anything that's incomplete, so if you forget to put your full name, if you forget to put your full address, your mailing address, the appropriate email, the secretary is going to notify, you'll be notified, and there'll be a way for you to rectify any missing pieces, but it's really important that you include all of the information that's needed. And this email address, the coordinator is extremely responsive. So reach out by phone or by email, and you'll hear back quickly. And so the deadline for this, if you see here, I would, utilize the email, because if it were to be mailed, the recommendation was to submit it by the 20th. So that date has passed. And so the Postal Service cannot guarantee that if it hasn't been mailed out yet to utilize this system, that it's not a guarantee that it'll be received in time, which brings in the ability to request by email. And the deadline for them to receive your application to request is by 5 p.m. on October 28th. So there is still time to do this via email if it is something that will be beneficial to you to get your vote in. And I think that's all I have, Ellen. Thank you.
Kathleen, do you want to talk about like what type of disability, like who should be seeking this out? Like who can use this?
Yeah, thank you. So basically the oh gosh,
So actually,
thing's frozen.
So I have a class that I'm preparing for at upcoming camp.
You want me? I'm sorry.
Yeah, could you, I can't
okay,
see
so
my
I think
screen
we
right
lost. The accessible vote by mail system is available to voters who are blind or who have vision impairments, mobility, dexterity disabilities, or other disabilities that make it difficult or impossible for them to effectively access a paper ballot by mail ballot because they cannot independently read, write, hold, or physically manipulate standard print materials. So that's on the Secretary of State website.
Yeah, you can find that full list right at the link. It'll give you that full list. Thank you. You disappeared into the corner, but I just found everybody.
Yeah, but this is a great new system to make voting more accessible for people with disabilities. So it's really exciting. Thank you, Kathleen, for sharing. Okay, so I think for the last slide, we just want you to know that as we did in 2016, we're gonna initiate our campaign of encouraging people to share why they're voting and why this election is so important to them. So on our website, we'll have a template to make a sign. And we encourage you all to take a photo or make a video and share your reasons why you're voting and why your vote matters. And share it on social media and use the hashtag #TheArcVotes. And then tag the Arc Massachusetts when you do so. And we just want to encourage everyone to vote early and to make a plan. And if you have a plan, then encourage your friends and your family members to make a plan as well. But yeah, our vote has power, as our logo says. So thanks everyone for joining. I'm gonna look and see if anybody's chatted, if anybody has any questions. Doesn't look like we have anything in the chat box, but if you want to unmute yourself, you're welcome to ask us any questions. I mean, we've got most of our information from the Secretary of State website, so I really encourage everybody that has any questions, certainly go there. It is just a plethora of information. And then of course, our website has all the information as well from our slides and a little bit more detail. And then all of our policy positions are up on our website as well as the Arc of US website.
I just have a quick question. This is Andrea from Work Inc. And
Okay.
both of you had mentioned the guardianship. If you have a guardian, you can still vote unless there's. Do you know where's the language around that I can send out to some of our folks here, because there have been issues around, well, the guardians don't want them to, and they have, so I just want to get some clarification to make sure that even if our folks have a guardian, that unless it's in a judge has said otherwise, they still have the right to vote.
Yeah, we can send the statute along with.
One of the pages links right to the statute, Andrea.
Oh, great. Okay.
Oh,
You want me to go back?
okay. Awesome. So you're going to share this, obviously, I think.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Here
Yeah,
we go.
that would be, thank you so much. That would be very helpful, just because we
It
had
is.
some-
I can see that's one of the biggest question. Like that's the most received question.
Yeah.
It's just so critical that people know their rights. But I can see how there may or may not be, dependent upon.
Yep.
situation.
So I it's just nice to have the link to say no.
Yeah.
Here's the
Yeah.
the legality
There's also
of it.
language. There's also language around. To be honest, there's a language around not having to sort of bring that decree and prove anything is said.
Okay.
So it's specified. So the link is there, and then also utilizing sort of the advocacy around the ADA. But there's certain specific language around that. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So I will check it out when you guys send the slides out.
Great.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Anyone
Yeah, I mean,
else
that's certainly
questions?
in other states, that's not the case. So, I mean, it's great that we have that in Massachusetts.
Remember, the X value always comes first. Which is the X value?
This is a lot. It is simple in some levels, but it's complex because we want to make sure that, so if you're registered to vote, you're all set. You make a plan. You want to vote in person, or you want to vote early, and then which way is most beneficial to you, which is the easiest path. Who do you want to help you if you need somebody to help you? There's language in these about in the Bill of Rights that a person has the right to stay in, bring certain materials with them in the voting booth, and the time that they have to stay in that voting booth. I would anticipate this election may have people waiting in line, and maybe not because of the early voting. However, if there aren't people in line, a person can stay in that booth up to 10 minutes. So there's a lot of specific language targeting the specific rights of all people, but specifically for people with disabilities.
It should be because it says unmute themselves, so you should be.
So it looks like we have the up if you want to make a sign about,
I'm not
it's so important. This is the link.
on my side, though, unfortunately.
Thank you for sharing that.
It's not on my side, unfortunately, because I've given all of the students the opportunity.
All right, does anybody else have any questions or concerns? And we definitely encourage you, if you do have, particularly on election day, if there are concerns, there are poll watchers at your polling place. So you can ask to speak to the poll watcher. And then, of course, the Disability Law Center is available if you have an immediate question as well. I mean, we mentioned the provisional ballots. I really encourage everyone to try to vote that day without doing provisional ballot if there is a problem. I mean, I've done poll watching before, and so I just want to encourage that. I mean, if that's not possible, provisional ballot is fine. But, if there's a way, like if you are, let's say you're at the wrong polling place, to get to the right polling place, that the correct one, to drive there as well. Like instead of doing provisional ballot, I would encourage that. But that's sort of in the weeds. But I mean, if I just wanted to make sure that people knew that there are poll watchers there, and so if you have any concerns that day that your rights are being violated, just seek them out.
Yeah.
But hopefully everyone will have an easy vote, and that won't happen because it is really simple. Massachusetts does make it pretty simple, easy for people to vote and to vote early if they choose to, and and that email access to voting by email is a wonderful tool as well. So.
Fantastic. Thank you
so
everyone
much, guys.
joining us.
Yeah.
Thank you for the information.
You're very
Thank you.
welcome.
Thanks.
All right.
Great. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.